All right, today, once again, I've had a comparably large number of people requesting that I take a look at Starfield, Nexus Mods, and the banning of a particular mod that removes pronouns from the game, because this title, Starfield that is, has been somehow transformed, for some, into an avatar of the culture war. At first, I didn't really want to do it. That's not the type of video I want to make anymore. The viewership might be super high, strictly speaking, on that front these days, with brain-dead influencers on either side of the political extremes ruining the next generation of our youth, but for me it seemed like a waste of time. I'm just going to be completely honest about that. Well, that might still be true. It definitely is still true, but I make it a point to at least consider topics when there's an outsized amount of viewer feedback, so here I am. The goal? Give a nuanced take on an otherwise irrational discussion, and again, for the sake of transparency, these are like the stone cold easiest types of videos for anyone to make. I don't have to read financial documents or track down corporate press releases or disentangle a complex web of social media profiles from the past 10 years. I just have to sit here and give an opinion. It's easy compared to the normal content, so yeah, there's an upside for me. I could do like 3 of these a day if I wanted to, because they take relatively zero effort and very little knowledge. But hey, it is what it is, and today's video is about the Starfield pronoun Nexus Mods fiasco. And honestly, I'm jealous of other creators that only make content like this because my god, your life is easy. Basic overview. Starfield, immediately after release, ran into a lot of controversy when some players discovered that there is pronoun selection in the character creator, as well as a couple of quests that seem to emphasize transition between genders, or something like that. There's a character that is incorrectly referred to as a clone, but in reality functions more as a chimera with multiple sets of DNA. At least that's my understanding of it, but whatever, that's beside the point. Regardless, the game is being accused of wokeism, and trust me, I've leveled my fair share of accusations at games for similar content in the past, but this time, I just don't feel it. Example, when Mortal Kombat decided to take out garment destruction and other features while altering the appearance of certain characters and costumes, very particular characters and costumes, it felt like an actual deviation from source material. It seemed to me like the game was changing things on a deliberate mission to stamp out what someone somewhere in leadership must have decided was sexist content, despite the fact that garment destruction can be a visual indicator with utility, and the fact that these were well-established characters with a large number of fans who liked them the way they were. So yeah, bit complicated. I really don't have a problem criticizing developers who go out of their way to modify long-standing characters and make them more conforming under today's rigid set of woke ideals. And they deserve that criticism, by the way. I'll never back down from it. But let's remember something here, something very important. Most people, including me, have championed the argument that if someone wants to see modern principles of sex, gender, and politics woven into video games, they should, and this is the very important quote, make their own original characters. That's the key piece in all of this, and I'm sad to say that a lot of people who genuinely probably just care about video games have lost sight of that premise. See, swapping a character's race, as an example, and blatantly contradicting lore, like what happened in the Witcher television show, despite that also being a pretty good show and Henry Cavill was amazing, that is an example of altering established lore. Starfield? Well, like it or not, Starfield is fresh intellectual property. There is no established lore. It's a brand new universe, and as such, the argument that has most often been used doesn't really apply here. See, if this entire video is just going to be me and my opinion, which it is, I have to explain my logic. When looking at controversy like this, over the past few years at least, I've developed a sort of passive-active mentality. In the example of Mortal Kombat, or other instances in movies, games, and entertainment media where characters get racially swapped, that's active. The changes happen in a proactive way, thereby altering what exists already, with a knowing disregard for anyone who enjoyed what was there before. I take a very firm stance against active wokeism in entertainment, and I'll continue to do that, of course. But see, passive wokeism in media is when a company takes something new or unknown and creates it from the ground up in such a way that it contains woke principles or ideals, but has not actively removed, altered, or disrespected existing content. See, I criticize active wokeism in media harshly and brutally and oftentimes in the past, but when it comes to passive wokeism, I judge that based on merit, because obviously I do. I'm a rational human being. Are the characters good? Is the game fun? Do the decisions make sense? Are they explained? Do I feel an emotional response to the story or find myself engaged in a way that justifies the price tag? Merit. That's the key. An example of this would be the show Billions, where one of the most well-written characters, in my opinion at least, would be Taylor Mason. Sure, I think their investing strategy in the show is at times rather stupid, but the character is calculated, intelligent, well-written, and through a merit-based lens, worthy of praise. They didn't overwrite existing content to be there. They are holistically new, obviously considered when it comes to how they operate in the show's world. And I'm not shy about saying that they're one of my favorites when I watch the show. Moves, counter moves, blindside strategic plays, it's fun, but it's an example of passive wokeism. See, Starfield itself is passive wokeism, and as such, sticking to my principles here, it's a first-party world, fresh intellectual property created from the ground up that includes woke elements, and it's fine. Passive. I judge it based on merit, and I don't look at it as something that needs to be fought against because it's not tearing down something established to make a point. It's building something new and trying to deserve my money. If someone wants to boycott it for the inclusion of pronouns and woke themes, fine, that's their prerogative. But I don't find myself going that route for this one. Now, when it comes to Nexus Mods, things change, at least a little bit. See, Nexus Mods curates a community of player-made additions to the game, but a fan creation that removes the pronouns has now been banned. Actually, the people that made it as well have been banned, I think. This is a tricky one because if I'm trying to be consistent, and I am trying to be consistent, would that be active or passive? On the surface, it seems active, but let's really think it through. Active wokeism in entertainment is changing something, removing it, or otherwise altering the product for political reasons in a way that overwrites what was there before, but the principle doesn't just apply to woke content, it remains consistent regardless of what side you're on. Starfield is new, unique, and contains particular themes. The product made by a community member on Nexus Mods is active anti-wokeism because it overwrites what exists already to remove an established piece of the game, however young that game might be. Like it or not, if we're being ideologically consistent here, it's an active mod, not a passive one. However, that's the entire premise of modifications to a game, is to change things. That's important to remember. In response, the modification team has decided to get rid of that mod, which caused outrage among some in the community, but this is where logic fails and things kind of fall apart. See, pronouns are a choice. Don't get me wrong, I'm not falling into the trap here and saying that anything to do with sexuality or gender is ever a choice, but pronouns absolutely are. Choosing what words you go by or respond to in conversation, whatever those words might be, is a conscious decision. If somebody calls me buddy, it's not my pronoun, but I can choose whether or not to even acknowledge that they're speaking to me. I won't step on the landmine of neo-pronouns right now, and it is a landmine, you betcha. But yeah, the basic courtesy of calling someone what they want to be called, and the desire to be called whatever thing it is in the first place, all of it, top to bottom, is a choice. Which means that Nexus Mods is deleting modifications to a game that interfere with specific choices. Now, sure, they can hide behind the banner of inclusivity, but in that case, let me draw a parallel. What about pacifists? What do we do when someone makes a choice to be as non-violent as possible and rejects the premise of violence completely in their games? That might seem abstract, but is it though? See, some people in the Nexus Mods community rejected the choice to select pronouns and thus removed that choice from the game in a mod. So what if community members decided that they reject the choice of non-violence and create a mod that forces every single dialogue option possible to end in combat? Yeah, Nexus Mods has a lot of content like that, or at least mods that emphasize the graphic nature of said combat, not necessarily for Starfield, not yet anyway, there will be, but plenty of games have that type of content, they do, hosted on Nexus Mods, which helps underline my point. If there was a mod that eliminated pacifism as an option, strictly speaking, it's already impossible for a couple missions in Starfield, but let's say the mod forced combat at every conceivable juncture, or applied to a different game like Skyrim, or somewhere where pacifism was truly possible and made it impossible. What should Nexus Mods do? It's an optional mod that removes a choice that some players decide to make. Fundamental building blocks here, that's the reality. Those players may feel deeply connected to their choice. They may even feel that such a choice defines their identity as a human, right? Pacifism is important to a lot of people. But should combat mods that emphasize and increase the amount of conflict in the game be banned outright in order to protect those players? No, obviously not. Why then is a modification to the game which is entirely optional yet removes a simple choice being banned, when thousands of additional mods exist that optionally remove choices, right? That's the question I have to ask, and it's a question they cannot truly answer. They'll say things like, those choices are hateful or discriminatory or bigoted, anti-inclusive, whatever. Some kind of word soup that they want to manufacture. But none of it matters because the contradiction is now irrefutable, and they just have to fall back on, well, we're allowed to do that, so we're going to ban it. Nonviolence is a choice, but they will host mods that restrict, remove, or obliterate that concept entirely. Pronouns are a choice, yet Nexus Mods will restrict and ban community-made creations outright because they perceive the very existence of a choice to remove something that a player doesn't like as hateful. Active versus passive, that right there is the very definition of active wokeism. See, a lot of people will probably dislike this take on both sides of the ideological spectrum. Some people will scream at me for being too lax in my criticism of Bethesda and Starfield. Others will scream at me for daring to say that pronouns are a choice and criticizing the active nature of Nexus Mods decision making. But what it really comes down to is my own actual legitimate consistency. Starfield is a fresh universe. Whatever amount of woke themes it might contain is passive, and if I harken back to the most common criticism of make your own original characters, don't change ones that exist already, well, that is precisely what they did. If I don't like it, I don't have to buy it. And for me, the game was fun, so I don't regret buying it in the slightest. However, Nexus Mods has turned from passive to selective and extremely active moderation, deciding what choices can and cannot be made by players, thereby overstepping, in my opinion, and breaching my personal boundary of what should and should not happen. If you really spend some time thinking about it, consistency isn't even that hard. But Starfield is the victim now of something bigger than rational criticism. Starfield is an avatar of the culture war or whatever. It's a beacon to everyone on what can and cannot be tolerated in their own mind. And for a lot of these nutjobs, the other side is what can't be tolerated. Problem is, the other side is just code for everyone who doesn't agree with me 100% of the time about who can and cannot speak, which just continually dials up the temperature, both sides trying to get the others so that they can't speak, when all that should be happening is gamers enjoying a game and modders making a bunch of mods. Don't like it? Don't buy it. Don't agree with them? Don't install them. Sucks to see, but consistency these days is a dying breed. That's my take. Don't worry, I'm braced for the anger in the comment section should it appear, but if you want to support, check out the links down below: Patreon, locals, and channel memberships. Way better than AdSense, cybersecurity product affiliate list, etc., but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. Man, this type of video is so easy to make. I understand why a lot of creators gravitate towards it and just spam out a bunch of it, because I bet you anything this video is going to have more views than a lot of the videos that I actually care about and put a ton of effort into. But well, maybe we'll see. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's going to flop. I kind of hope it flops in that sense, but whatever. As always, thank you all for watching and have a nice night.